Paris breathes differently at dawn. Before the cafes awaken and before the Seine begins to shimmer under daylight, the city holds its secrets close. At the center of it all rises the Louvre Museum, once a medieval fortress, then a royal palace, and by the early 20th century, the beating heart of French cultural pride. Within its vast corridors hung thousands of masterpieces, each whispering fragments of Europe's past. Among them was a small Renaissance portrait by Leonardo da Vinci, admired, respected, but not yet legendary. And in August 1911, something happened inside those walls that would change art history forever. Though no one yet realized how profoundly it would reshape fame itself. On Monday, August 21st, 1911, the Louvre was closed to the public. Maintenance workers shuffled through echoing galleries. At some point between morning and midday, the painting we now call the Mona Lisa vanished. No smashed glass, no dramatic confrontation. Just an empty space where a portrait had quietly hung. By Tuesday morning, when artist Louis Barraud arrived to sketch in the gallery, confusion rippled outward. Had the painting been moved for photography, cleaning, restoration? Hours passed before the truth settled like a stone in the gut of the nation. It was gone. France reeled, newspapers erupted, the humiliation was national. How could the republic that claimed guardianship over civilization's treasures lose a masterpiece from its own walls? Crowds gathered outside the Louvre. The empty space on the wall became an attraction in itself. People lined up not to see a painting, but to witness absence, and in that void, myth began forming. The thief was not a criminal genius. He was a laborer. An Italian immigrant named Vincenzo Peruggia had once worked at the Louvre, fitting protective glass to paintings. He knew the building's rhythms, its stairwells, its blind corners. On that Monday, wearing a worker's smock, he removed the panel from its frame, tucked it under his clothing, and walked calmly out of the museum, down a staircase, through a courtyard, onto a Paris street. No alarms sounded, no guards tackled him. And perhaps most astonishing of all, no one stopped him. For 2 years, the painting remained hidden in a modest Paris apartment, tucked inside a trunk. While authorities imagined international syndicates and master criminals, the reality sat in a closet. Police even questioned avant-garde artists, including a young Pablo Picasso, whose reputation for radical experimentation made him an easy suspect. The investigation spiraled outward in embarrassment. France searched for a mastermind, never suspecting the answer had been walking among them. The irony is staggering. Before the theft, the Mona Lisa was one masterpiece among many. Afterward, she became the most talked about painting in the world. Reproductions filled newspapers from New York to Moscow. Her half-smile, once subtle, now seemed enigmatic, almost mocking. Fame, it seemed, could be manufactured not only by genius, but by scandal. And as we unravel how a single act of theft transformed a Renaissance portrait into a global obsession, consider this. History does not only reward greatness, it amplifies drama. If you're drawn to stories where power, myth, and human ambition collide, take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps more people discover these hidden intersections of history and ensures stories like this continue to surface from the shadows. But the theft was only the beginning, because while France searched blindly, a fingerprint sat quietly in police archives, a clue that could have ended the mystery almost immediately. Had anyone thought to look at the other hand? In the wake of the disappearance, Paris did not merely panic, it modernized. For the first time, a work of art became the center of a global criminal investigation. And standing at the crossroads of old policing and new science was a man determined to bring order to chaos, Alphonse Bertillon. He believed crime could be measured, cataloged, reduced to data. If the Mona Lisa had vanished, he insisted she had left a trace. And somewhere inside the Louvre's silent galleries, that trace was waiting to be discovered. Bertillon was already a pioneer. He had developed anthropometry, a system of identifying criminals by precise body measurements, and introduced standardized mugshots long before they were common practice. But now he faced a crime unlike any other, the theft of his symbol. Detectives examined the abandoned frame. They dusted its surface carefully. And there it was, a single thumbprint, clear, unmistakable, a silent witness pressed into wood. The Louvre had, in fact, fingerprinted many of its workers, including former employees. Among them, Vincenzo Peruggia. His prints were stored in police records. The answer existed within reach, but bureaucracy proved stronger than insight. Bertillon's filing system categorized fingerprints primarily by the right hand. The print on the frame, it came from the left. No one thought to cross-reference both hands. The identity of the thief sat quietly in a cabinet drawer while newspapers screamed about international plots and criminal masterminds. As months stretched into years, the absence of the Mona Lisa only magnified her legend. Tourists visited the Louvre not to admire art, but to stare at the blank space. Postcards of the empty walls circulated across Europe. What had once been a portrait became a question mark, and questions travel faster than beauty ever could. The French government faced humiliation. Was this an inside job, a nationalist conspiracy? Or had France simply failed to guard its cultural soul? Meanwhile, Peruggia waited. He did not flee to Argentina or hide in a remote village. He remained in Paris. He told friends he had acted out of patriotism, that Napoleon's armies had looted Italy, and he was correcting history. In his mind, he was not a thief but a restorer of national honor. Yet 2 years passed with no triumph, no recognition, only the suffocating presence of the world's most famous hidden object inside his trunk. Then, in December 1913, impatience overcame caution. Peruggia traveled to Florence. He contacted an art dealer, Alfredo Geri, claiming he wished to return the painting to Italy. When Geri and Giovanni Paggi, director of the Uffizi, examined the work in a hotel room, they found Leonardo's unmistakable hand beneath the varnish. The secret was over. Police arrested Peruggia swiftly. His trial in Italy transformed him into something unexpected, a folk hero to some, a misguided fool to others. He claimed patriotic motives, insisting the painting belonged in Italy. The court sentenced him lightly, just over a year in prison, much of which he had already served. Soon after, he faded into anonymity. But the Mona Lisa did not. Before returning to France, she toured Italy in triumph. Florence, Rome, Milan, crowds lining streets to glimpse the once missing masterpiece. When she finally returned to the Louvre in 1914, she was no longer merely a Renaissance painting. She was an icon forged by absence, scandal, and global obsession. And yet, while the world obsessed over a stolen portrait, few noticed something else. The theft had proven how fragile institutions truly were. If one worker could walk out with a masterpiece, what did that say about power, about image, about control? Because decades earlier, in the very same city, another figure had understood something profound. That power must not only be seized, it must be staged. Long before the Mona Lisa vanished into a Paris apartment trunk, another drama unfolded in the same city. Not a theft, but a performance of power so calculated it would echo for centuries. December 2, 1804, inside the vast interior of Notre-Dame Cathedral, the air was thick with incense and expectation. Europe watched, monarchies trembled, and at the center stood a man who understood something dangerous and profound. History belongs to those who control the image. By the end of that day, Napoleon Bonaparte would not merely wear a crown, he would redefine what it meant to be remembered. The ceremony was theater in its purest form. The procession through Paris was choreographed down to the smallest detail, velvet robes heavy with gold embroidery, banners lifted high, trumpets announcing destiny. The revolution had overthrown kings, France had executed a monarch. And yet here was Napoleon, a general born to minor nobility, preparing to crown himself emperor of the French. Not king by divine right, but emperor by will. In a moment that stunned even Pope Pius VII, Napoleon seized the crown from the pontiff's hands and placed it upon his own head. It was deliberate, symbolic, a message broadcast across Europe. His authority did not descend from heaven. It rose from himself, and then, turning, he crowned Josephine. The crowd erupted, the empire was born in spectacle. But the image most people remember is not the living moment beneath cathedral arches, it is the painting. Commissioned from Jacques-Louis David, the colossal canvas titled The Coronation of Napoleon freezes the ceremony in oil and grandeur. Yet it is not a documentary record, it is choreography perfected. Napoleon appears calm, magnified, central. His mother, who did not attend the ceremony, is placed prominently in the composition as a symbol of familial legitimacy. Figures are repositioned, gestures softened, reality refined. And in that refinement lies power. David understood propaganda long before the term became common. He had painted revolutionaries, martyrs, and now emperors. His brush did not merely depict events, it constructed them. The painting spans nearly 10 meters in width, overwhelming viewers with scale. Gold glows, fabrics shimmer, faces tilt upward in reverence. Every inch whispers inevitability. And here lies the parallel that binds this story to the Mona Lisa's theft. Fame and authority are rarely accidents. They are engineered. Napoleon knew that victory on the battlefield was temporary, but image was permanent. The empire would rise and fall, armies would advance and retreat. But a painting inside the Louvre would outlive them all. Today, millions stand before David's canvas inside the Louvre. They photograph it, they marvel at its scale. Few pause to consider how carefully reality was adjusted to create memory. In that gallery, history feels fixed, solid, eternal, but it is not, it was arranged. If you're captivated by the way power and myth intertwine, by how art shapes what we believe about the past, take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps more viewers discover how history is not only lived, but staged. And it ensures these deeper stories continue to unfold beyond the surface of familiar names. Because while Napoleon mastered the art of image-making deliberately, the Mona Lisa's fame erupted almost by accident. One was propaganda by design, the other myth by scandal. Yet both now hang within the same museum walls. And that raises a question more unsettling than any theft or coronation. Is the Louvre a guardian of truth? Or the greatest stage history has ever known? Today, visitors enter the Louvre Museum through glass and steel, descending beneath Olymp's modern pyramid into a palace older than revolutions. They pass through galleries lined with marble and empire gold, drawn by instinct toward one room in particular. There, behind layers of climate control and bulletproof glass, hangs a painting smaller than most expect, the Mona Lisa. Cameras rise in unison. Phones glow, and in the hum of thousands of whispers, something becomes clear. This is no longer merely art, it is spectacle. Her fame was not sealed in a Florentine studio by Leonardo da Vinci alone, it was amplified by absence. Forged in scandal, broadcast by headlines. The theft of 1911 transformed a Renaissance portrait into a global obsession. When she returned to Paris, crowds greeted her like a victorious monarch. Reproduction followed reproduction, her smile became shorthand for mystery itself. The world had learned that loss can generate value more powerfully than presence. Across the museum, in a gallery of monumental scale, hangs another construction of memory, the coronation of Napoleon. On that vast canvas, Napoleon Bonaparte stands immortal, robed in imperial grandeur, forever poised in triumph. The empire he built dissolved, the wars ended, borders shifted. Yet the painting remains, glowing, triumphant, authoritative. It does not show defeat at Waterloo, it does not show exile. It shows power at its peak, frozen forever. That is the gift of image-making. The Louvre, then, is not simply a repository of the past, it is a theater where memory is curated. A place where theft creates icons and brushstrokes manufacture legitimacy. Within its walls, a laborer like Vincenzo Peruggia could accidentally elevate a portrait beyond measure. A ruler like Napoleon could deliberately sculpt his own immortality. And a scientist like Alphonse Bertillon could glimpse the future of forensic investigation, only to be undone by the limits of his own system. What lingers is not merely what happened, it is what endured. The Louvre teaches a quiet, unsettling lesson: history is selective. It remembers images more vividly than facts. It preserves spectacle more faithfully than context. Millions who photograph the Mona Lisa rarely recall the details of her theft. Millions who admire Napoleon's coronation rarely question how the scene was altered for effect. The frame shapes the story, the canvas dictates the memory, and so Paris continues to perform. Tourists surge through corridors once walked by kings and revolutionaries. Guides recite dates, cameras flash, the museum remains vigilant, its security layers thick, its masterpieces guarded. Yet beneath the marble and glass lies a deeper truth: power and myth are inseparable companions. The Mona Lisa smiles, unchanged, untroubled, while the world projects meaning onto her face. Napoleon stands crowned in oil and pigment, eternally victorious. Both reside in the same institution. One famous by accident, one immortalized by design. Together, they reveal something profound about humanity's hunger to shape narrative, because history is not only what happened, it is what was displayed. What was stolen, what was painted, what was remembered. And inside the Louvre, the stage is never empty.